How bad is the situation in your view in the region? Because there's been so much worry, frankly, over the fact that when it comes to the numbers in Iran, this just isn't hard data and it's just not numbers that anybody can trust.
The issue with coronavirus is that the uncertainty of how long this is going to last, the uncertainty of how it is going to impact long-term societies, markets, and all that. But also, if you don't have transparency, it's very hard to trust countries that are supposed to be dealing with this. And so, of course, with Iran, the long-term denial, the fact that you had the deputy health minister, the fact that you had the vice president, you've had a number of MPs get it, and also the number of deaths are being completely underestimated. You've had numerous reports actually verify that the numbers of dead are much higher than what the government is announcing. The other issue, of course, for the region is that in countries like Iraq, Bahrain, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, all the cases that started there originated from Iran. And so people were traveling and not declaring that they had even been there when the cases started to get so bad. We've heard reports, and actually verified reports, that the Iranians were not stamping people's passports as they were leaving the country.
Like Israel.
Like Israel does with some people when they visit the region. And so it's terrible, because if they're not stamping passports, there's no way of knowing. And so, for example, Saudi Arabia, one of the first moves they did was they said any of the GCC countries, if their residents were going, had to use their passports, because here you can go with your residence ID. And they said, no more, you have to bring your passports. But even that didn't work because the Iranians weren't stamping their passports. So that kind of disregard, the Saudi cabinet yesterday issued a statement and said they're very concerned about the Iranians' approach to this, because, again, this coronavirus has no borders, does not respect boundaries or passport lines or so forth. They need collaboration regionally. And unfortunately, you haven't seen that come from the Iranian government in trying to hide how big the problem is. Of course, with porous borders in Iraq, with porous borders even in Afghanistan, the first cases in Afghanistan, Herat, originated from Iran. With porous borders and irresponsible government, this really can get out of hand. Now, on the flip side, of course, we have to remind people that the number of recovered is higher than the number of deaths, substantially. Globally, you've had 62,000 people recover from 110,000 people who have actually gotten coronavirus. So yes, it's not to make people think this is all doom, but it's important to say that if we're going to get a handle over this, you need transparency from all the governments involved.
What about Lebanon? Because this is at a time when that country is in economic collapse, coronavirus just adding fuel to the fire there. Do you think that we're going to see some moves by the Lebanese government that will eventually lead to an IMF bailout? We know Hezbollah is against it. I mean, what happens next in your view?
The decision to default on the euro bonds was not an easy one. This is the first time Lebanon has defaulted. This is a country that relies on creditors believing that they will pay back, and they've now broken that norm. We're living in a time where actually norms and precedents no longer count for much. However, many people inside of Lebanon actually agreed with that decision and said that we could not just continue to finance our debt and not think about what people's day-to-day lives look like. So in some ways, Hassan Diab's government actually got some support for making that decision. But that is a very short-term policy. Then what happens? And the problem is, without the IMF bailout and without taking really harsh measures, this crisis will continue to spiral out of control. And of course, Hezbollah is being a huge impediment to that, partly because they're thinking if they continue to stand off, somebody will come and bail out Lebanon as they usually do.
Well, it ain't going to be Iran.
It ain't going to be Iran.
So
exactly.
what happens next there? Because that's the question, isn't it? I mean, how long can they continue to hold on for dear life in terms of political power?
Well, the problem is that domestically people are suffering. People will start rioting eventually. If you get hungry, you can't keep people to continue to just protest peacefully and wait for a miracle to happen. Without an IMF bailout and without the Gulf countries stepping in as they usually do and bailing out Lebanon, because they're sick and tired of just giving cover for Hezbollah to get stronger within Lebanon, there has to be something that gives domestically in Lebanese politics. Unfortunately, the majority of Lebanese politicians have shown that they're still not going to change the way that they operate. And until they do, this crisis will continue to spiral out of control.